about to get started, okay?
Okay. For the December 13th hearing for the 2020 levy and Board of Education meeting is called on to order at 8:47. Roll call, please.
Rose?
Here.
Blackman? Here. Sharon? Here. Leestra? Here. Lanier?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Briggs?
Here. The quorum is present. Oh, okay. I will entertain a motion to open and approve the taxation hearing.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Blackman? Yes. Nelson?
Yes.
Leestra? Yes. Lanier?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Rose?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes. Okay, are there any comments regarding the 2021 tax levy?
Well, we have so many public, but so I'm going to need to kind of walk it through. And we've already been here a while, so I'm going to try and fly through this. But I wanted to go back over the idea of levy in total versus what the individual tax bills look like, okay? So to be clear, just from this here, we're going to just look at, these are the levy years. And here is what the extensions actually put out. Here was CPI, so we're going back to 2017. In total, your tax revenue, CPI was 2.1, we actually increased 2.11 because of new property. Next year, same thing, very little new property, we're at 2.1. This year, your increase was actually -6, that's when you saw that first property tax relief grant money. And then last year, on the 2.3 CPI, we actually extended 2.35% increase. So in total, you're staying in CPI or lower, okay? But let's talk about what happens to the individual bills. Let's just make an assumption that you had a $1,000 extension, okay? And you had these 5 taxpayers. They would each have a proportion of the bill based on the amount of property that they owned in proportion to the total. Okay, so you got 3 individuals and they're paying 10% of that bill. You've got a big business that's paying half of the bill, and you got a smaller business that's paying 20% of the bill. Okay? In the next year, when the levy goes up, let's say it went up by 2%, in a perfect world, if everyone's property values stayed exactly the same proportion to the total, they would all see that 2% increase on their bill, okay? But in reality, that's not what happens. Either because of increases like a change in the assessed valuation, or because of P-tabs and other things, properties don't all change in assessed valuation the same rate as everybody else. So it's just one pie, but it's about what your percentage of the piece of that pie is. So in this example, let's just say that that big business decided that their property was being assessed too high, and they got it reduced by 10,000 from the 50,000 to the 40. You can see its impact on the bills. They're actually going to be receiving a reduction when everybody else then picks up a larger piece of that. And then if the second business did the same thing and theirs got knocked down, again, the percentages all change, and so who's paying the bill shifts. Okay? So let's look at it in terms of what's actually happened here in Flossmoor with your piece of this bill. Okay? So the 2019 to the 2020, you can see at the bottom here, in total, our EAV increased by 17%. Remember, it was a recessive year last year, okay? So in total, your values went up 17%. But look what happened to the properties. I grabbed 5 properties. The first one's a commercial property, the other 4 are residences. But you can see that they didn't all increase at the same percentage as each other. So in total, 17 on that last column, but that commercial property went up 45%, and your residence went up anywhere between 7% and 42% depending on the property. So what did that do to their bills? The same thing. So in total, we were at a 2.4% increase, actual dollars received by the school district. But who paid those? We had one taxpayer actually had a reduction last year from the prior year, and we had them going as high as 30% increase, depending on your property. So that's why when I tell you, in total, I can guarantee you it's going to be 2.3%, or in our case this year, 1.5%. I can't guarantee you that the individual bills are only going to go up by that 1.5, or the 2.4, or whatever happens to be for that year. Okay, with that being said, these are the numbers that we're putting into the property tax that your extension will be for this year. It does what we said it was going to do. It is going back to original amount without that first property tax relief grant. It's taking the abatement for the second property tax relief grant and then abating the Senate Bill 508 revenue recapture to give you an overall extension of approximately 1.5% over the prior year. Okay. It did go in the newspaper, although it's not required to because you're not looking at over a 5% increase. But this is a levy that we're asking you to put on. And then probably in January, after John Izzo finishes going over the abatement documents and making sure that the language is correct, we'll bring you the 2 abatement documents and we'll file those. They have to be filed by April 1st. Okay? Any questions then? That's what you're doing. So you won't take any action now. You'll just close the floor to a public hearing, and then you can just take action during your normal action items. Okay? Okay? Okay.
Any questions, Misha?
She was texting me before, and she was talking to me.
Misha, if you have any questions, send a text or answer.
Okay, can I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second. Okay, roll call, please.
Sharon? Yes. Waitstrom? Yes. Nelson?
Yes.
Rouse?
Yes.
Blackman?
No, she's not officially not there.
I got this one.
Hi, Misha.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know if this number is working, so just me.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We should ask if you had any questions about Fran's presentation.
No, I heard her. She's fine. It's wonderful that.
Great. Thank you. Oh, and then there was a vote to close the public hearing. You agree?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Lanier?
Yes.
Prince?
Yes. The truth and taxation hearing is adjourned at 8:56. So I do need to reopen the meeting? Or can I go?
I believe
No.
you're still open.
Oh, we're
Still, yep.
All right, okay, next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Okay. Thanks, so it's a doozy. Well, welcome to the last board meeting of the 2021 calendar year. We do have just over a full week of school left until winter break begins, so we do have a lot to accomplish. The last day of school before winter break is on Tuesday, December 22nd. we will return to in-person learning on Wednesday, January 5th. And I want to stress the term in-person because I've received a couple of questions from parents asking if we'd be able to work remotely after winter break. Unfortunately, there's no mechanism for us to work remotely in that fashion. It's only done on an emergency basis, or if we're told to do a large-scale quarantine by the Department of Public Health. We verified all that information with the Regional Office of Education this week. This week, we're preparing for our second COVID-19 vaccine clinic on Thursday, December 16th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. here at Normandy Middle School. For this session, a Moderna vaccine has been added to the option so people can receive their first or second shots and even their booster if needed. Vaccines remain one of the best strategies to prevent the infection and subsequent spread of the corona vaccines. We really encourage anyone who's available to participate. Also on December 16th, the Long Range Planning Committee will be meeting at Western Avenue School at 6:30 p.m. to continue their work. We'll be touring the school to hear about the needs of the students and staff in the various sections of the building that may need renovations moving forward. After that, the team will spend the remaining time focusing on the guiding principles for the continuation of the work. After Thursday's meeting, the next Long Range Planning Committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 19th at Heather Hill School. We're looking forward to that tour as well. I was visiting classrooms today, and I really would like to commend our students and staff members for maintaining their focus and hard work. Catching up from the pandemic is a continually challenging process. We need to make everyone count with our kids and our teachers, and they're doing just that. Winter break will be a great opportunity for our children and staff members to take a break to recharge their batteries as we approach the final 2 quarters of the school year. That's it on my report.
Dana, you said the 22nd is the last day, it's the 21st, right? Tuesday, right?
Correct.
I misheard that. The 21st, Tuesday is the last day.
Yes.
No, I go like 3 times.
22nd is the first day of break.
Correct, but I did the wrong day combination.
Okay, all right.
I apologize. Yes, Wednesday
Oh, yeah,
is when break officially begins. The end of the day on Tuesday,
21.
the 21st. Yep, there you go.
All right, thank you. Okay, next item, any questions about the superintendent's report? Okay, Learning and Instruction Committee?
So just a quick update. I think in our previous meeting we talked just a little bit about it. Both Michael and Janelle and Annabelle and I met before our meeting on the 22nd to talk about a couple of important pieces. Particularly, we started with science or the social studies adoption. We talked about what that integration looks like. Are we applying an equity lens of looking at the materials? Annabelle kind of talked about the process that she's using with the committee. Really wanted to make sure that the materials are fresh, that they're updated, that they really hit on the standards that are most important as we're moving forward. So we kind of wrapped up that social studies piece. The committee is continuing to meet, I know certainly through December, then we'll probably start our pilot January? Or is it February?
Yeah, at the end of January.
June. Great. We also moved into kind of that pre-K programming conversation with District 153. We did hear back from Dr. McAllister that Homewood 153 would be interested in additional conversations with District 161 about opportunities to provide pre-K learning for our districts. Again, at a very high level. We asked a few questions that we would want to take into that process. Who's included? What's the long-term stability of a move of this nature? What it would mean for the 2 districts working together? Everything comes from high-level theoretical conversations just what do we do with residency issues? So I think there's a ton of questions that we'll want to unpack as we move forward. I think it's exciting that there could be an opportunity for both districts to work together for the health of the community. Share those dollars and kind of move forward. So I think it's exciting as we at least get started. And then we did want to come back on we touched on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just as the Equity and Inclusion Committee kind of falls under the same umbrella as we're looking at the CRTL standards, and our next step is to reach out to District 168 who's moving forward on those teaching standards and working with their teachers, and we'll get some additional information on their implementation because those will be ramping up in the second half of the school year. Janelle or Michael or Annabelle, any other pieces you think that we missed those? Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including personnel report 21-011, payroll for the month of November, the FOIA request, and revised policies 2-10, 2-130, 2-240, 5-10, 6-145, 6-160, 6-235, 6-260, and 8-90.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Kraus,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. And the next item are the bills for the month of December.
That's right, actually.
I have had the pleasure of reviewing the bills. Fran answered some questions that I had this morning, and we are good to go. So I would like to make a motion to approve the bills for the month of December in the amount of $1,556,836.97.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call?
Rouse,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the shield testing contract extension?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. May I have a motion to adopt a property tax levy for the levy year 2021 for CPI at 1.4% in accordance with the laws under the property tax extension limitation law?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Lanier,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes. May I have a motion to approve a resolution updating the district's IRS Section 125 plan document, which will continue to offer employees options for pre-tax premiums for health insurance?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Blackman,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, the motion passes.
Can you clarify who first and second?
Rouse, me.
Thank you.
Yes. May I have a motion to approve the bid from Advantage Paving Solutions to perform the asphalt work at Flossmoor Hills and Heather Hill Schools at a cost of $393,805?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Lanier,
Yes.
Rouse,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. May I have a motion to approve a contract with Industrial Appraisal Company to perform an appraisal of the district's buildings, site improvements, and fixed equipment, including tagging of fixed equipment for $5,200?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Rouse,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Leestra.
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the recognition stipend for non-FEA members as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Schramm. Yes. Rouse,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes, and the motion passes.
Yeah, that's fine.
What's it?
Yeah.
Alright. May I have a motion to approve the expulsion decision for student 2022-A?
So moved.
Second.
Question.
Question.
Do we need to add anything to the motion based on our previous discussion?
based on your previous discussion.
And because
Well, yeah, the language officially says,
expulsion decision.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Okay,
it says the decision, and I think we were all clear on.
right, okay. All right.
My question follows the same line. Is it, as discussed today?
Tonight.
Okay.
Yep, as discussed tonight. So when we say that? As discussed in closed session.
As discussed in closed session.
That way, it's just, that way there's no
Good,
regular.
so moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Sharon? Yes. Leestra?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Rouse?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes, the motion passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda are the discussion items, and the first one is Western Avenue traffic study.
As part of the long-range plan, one of the things that we're looking at is the traffic pattern over at Western Avenue School. If you've been there, especially after school, we tend to back up Western Avenue because there's not enough room in the parking lot. So this is a traffic study that would be completed by Erickson Engineers. That'll take a look at both the traffic pattern before and after school, and kind of be able to come up with a really solid information as to what would potentially need to be done to remedy some of the issues that we're having over there at Western Avenue. And World Architects is recommending that we have this traffic study done. That way you guys have a little more concrete information rather than just anecdotal information, if you will. So it'll be a little more scientific in nature and give you guys a better idea of what we need to do in order to fix the issue over there.
Why are we doing this at Western only when, it's my understanding we're actually having traffic pattern issues at all schools?
So the traffic pattern issues at Western Avenue though is Western Avenue is that's a major road as opposed to it being just the neighborhood roads. It's becoming a real issue for the Boston Police Department. I mean, that we're backing up Western Avenue. I mean, Heather is in the middle of the neighborhood. You're right, it definitely gets a little congested at our pickups, but it's not blocking a major throughway of town. And Parker doesn't block like Flossmoor Road. Again, it's back into the neighborhoods when it starts getting a little backed up. And that's kind of what you're gonna find at almost every school.
I mean, yeah, and thank you for your answer. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's just that to me, as part of the long range, if we were actually going to be looking at all of our schools, then I'm like, is this just a Band-Aid because we're trying to find a fix for Western now? And then I'm just trying to get justification in my mind, so I can wrap my mind around what this money's for.
I believe that you're gonna have to do something about Western Avenue. There's really not enough parking there. And pick up, like again, you know, it's one thing to have, you know, Harold Crescent locked up. It's another thing to have Western Avenue not moving.
Okay, my last point, to be done. So we're going to spend money to have them tell us we have a problem.
Yep.
That we really already know, and we also have problems at other schools, which you kind of know. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm upset with you.
So you're going to spend $7,000. How much cost?
$7,000.
$7,200, something like that.
I don't know that there's a situation that I could recommend any traffic changes at Heather, for example, because they're not. If you look at the finite amount of money that we'll have, and you look at, you know, the costs that we're going to have to spend, I don't know that the board would choose to, you know, make a, you know, cut out part of the parking lot at Heather, for example, to make another bus drop off. You may, but I haven't heard that as, you know, one of the major projects that we've talked about moving forward, right? So we can certainly talk about expanding it. You know, we've talked about traffic at Heather. I just don't know that it's reached a point of crisis, which I think we have at Western Avenue. This will give you, it'll give you the clicks per afternoon, meaning, you know, cars coming down Barton, cars going down Western, north, south, etc. They'll go out, they'll count the spaces, they'll identify the number of staff members, you need X number of additional spaces, you have this many kids in the building, you have this many visitors, you have all those different pieces. So I think that's the perspective. We can certainly look at expanding it. I would just hate to spend $7,000 per school or spending dollars for school if we realistically don't think, one, that we're going to have the money to do the work at the other buildings, but also that the projects will rise to the level of something that we need to tackle.
And I appreciate that. It's not that I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a study done. I get that. Is it going to be something, as a result of the study, are we going to come back with something that we're actually going to be able to implement this school year?
Well, we'll be,
No, this is for
not this
construction.
school year, this is for additional information as to which projects we decide to tackle. And I think this one's gonna probably have to be one of those projects, just because it really is becoming a problem on Western Ave.
Okay, all right, I'm not trying to dominate, it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vidcon renewal.
You ready for 3 in a row? Stay awesome.
So first up is Vidcon. We're due for our renewal in January. That's when we signed up. I talked with Vidcon to try to get a partial agreement to get us on our fiscal year, and they have provided us with that info. There's a slight price increase. We actually got a discount because I found a price error initially, so they said, hey, good catch, here's some money off. So $62.50 will get us for 18 months, the remainder of the 21-22 school year, and then all of 22-23. We've used this for teachers. We're going to use this as part of our screening process for the principal candidates for Parker. So we found very good value in Vidcon in helping us target the right people. So we'd like to keep the relationship going with them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. 2022-23 staffing.
Staffing for next year. All right, so this staffing is based off of current enrollment, so we roll kindergarten through 4th grade up into, that's the 1 through 5 numbers. And then for kindergarten, I work with Fran to kind of get the cohort and birth rate, and I've been given about 186 students. And then I take that total and distribute it proportionally across the 4 elementary schools. That's where the kindergarten numbers come from. So at Fossil Hills overall FTEs will stay status quo in the classroom. They'll have to move one teacher from 2nd to 5th to accommodate class size issue there in 5th grade with 54. So instead of running to 27, adding a 3rd teacher will bring that down to 18. At Heather Gilder, we don't anticipate any changes, but we are going to keep an eye on the 3rd grade classroom there. Again, our last year, or actually for this school year, we reduced the class sizes in grades 1 through 3 due to learning loss and the pandemic, so that target is about 18 is what we're looking at in 1 through 3, and then 25 in 4 and 5. So that 3rd grade at Heather Hill is a little worrisome, so we're going to keep an eye on that.
But Eric, I'm trying to understand this when I looked at this before. 2 is at 22, and you're saying the 22.5 is worrisome.
Yes, because if you look at the projected FTE, it's rounding up. So 2.5, we round up 2.4,
Okay,
round
I
up.
see now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't read that initially. Okay.
Serena, we are projecting an addition there of a 4th grade teacher with 62 kids coming into 4th grade. And then also watching that 5th grade section, just to make sure that doesn't go too high there. And then Western, you have to remember, we have to worry about comparability. So we are going to look at reducing one 5th grade teacher at Western, but we're also going to keep an eye on that section in case we get more enrollments there at 5th grade. We will come back and potentially ask for another staff member there.
Usually ideally we'll do those conversations early in the spring.
Yeah.
We'll really put a big press on for registration. If we're sitting there at 27 on, May 1st, it may just be time to move forward.
Yeah. Parker is status quo with, again, the schedule goes out in sections, so 12 sections per grade level status quo at Parker. However, this year we have found with kind of the housing market increase or flipping enrollments did go up to where they were before, when we did have full-time specialist teachers at the elementary schools. We have found that it's not impossible what our specialist teachers at Heather Hill, Flossmoor Hills, and Serena Hills are doing, but they're taxed. Their schedules are stretched pretty thin with the additional sections that we've had to put into place this year, and then the travel piece that they have to contractually have. We found that those schedules are a little bit taxed, so we're asking to reinstate the full-time specialist teachers for art, music, and PE at those three elementary school buildings. So I've got what their current FTE is now. Flossmoor Hills has 2 different art and music and PE teachers that travel. So overall, for the specialist teachers, it would be an increase of 2 FTE. We would work with principals to determine where do our current staff go. Ideally, we would not want one building to fill find all 3 new specialist teachers. We would try to spread the wealth, but we'll have those conversations with the principals as this time comes.
This makes me very happy.
We're also going to asking for a part-time speech language pathologist with adding the early childhood classroom at pre-K at Flossmoor Hills. Speech services are being taxed at Flossmoor Hills and are also being taxed at Western. So this part-time speech language pathologist would assist with those early childhood classrooms at Flossmoor Hills and at Western. So that way services can be delivered adequately to all of those students that require them. And then in the analysis there, we do have the placeholder, we're projecting a placeholder FTE in those. We have 3 sections that we're watching, so we would just like to kind of budget for that, keep that in mind in the event that we come back later in the spring or early summer and say, yes, we're going to need that FTE or whatever, because the big level's gone over where we would like them to be. So an overall increase of 4.5 FTE at about 320,000 is what we're looking at.
Question. So one of the things that I've been trying to track and keep pace with is ESSER, and which positions we're dealing with ESSER. Is that in this report?
No, none of the ESSER positions we are rolling into local funds. That agency will come at this point next year if we are looking to do that.
So none of these positions are ESSER.
Nope, just normal business.
All right, thanks. Second question. I know at the beginning of the year, I'm saying it inaccurately. When we were talking about this topic before, we were looking at how COVID was going to impact. Then we had some parents who kind of said that they were not going to bring our children back and all of that. Does this new hiring incorporate all of those types of fluctuations?
They're back for the most part.
So most of those children have come back. I don't mean,
You mean the people who said they would prefer to stay remote?
Yep.
I don't know that I can give you an accurate answer because I don't know if they exist.
And that's fine, because it's more about making sure we actually have the staffing levels to accommodate.
If I'm thinking about the names in those conversations, yeah, they're there.
So
they will be. So I feel good that this is able to handle that.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then my last question of staffing. I know for the past couple of years that Western has had some overflow issues and that type of thing. Does this look at having enough staffing again at Heather to accommodate any of those overflows? Is all taken care of everything?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what their reference with comparability issues. You know, unfortunately, we won't be able to ever officially run away from those overflow issues at Western. But you know, with maintaining the class size that we have in the other places, we can certainly accept that overflow. The question becomes, you know, the overflow has to be wow, this happened, unfortunately now we have to do this. Hopefully there's enough space in here. Obviously 5th grade is a little bit close. But so that we can make those decisions earlier rather than later. If we have to open up another section, that's okay. There's nothing stopping us to do that. The staffing of the other buildings allows for overflow, but ideally we'd be able to prevent it as long as we keep the comparability between Western Avenue and Heather or Serena and Flossmoor Hills far enough apart.
Okay. My last question. So, thank you. With the addition for the art, music, PE, why didn't we just go ahead and get one for each of those three schools?
That's how it works out. That's how it will work out. Once you add the three other positions, then each school.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is 0.8 person and 0.5 person.
Yeah.
It's going to ultimately end up being one. Okay, because that wasn't clear. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good question, Steve.
As a second question, I think you went to the ISB session around ISB's short-term approvals. So I had a question around actually staffing these positions. At what point, because we're in shortage obviously, at what point will we look at other strategies? For example, if we can't fill all these positions you would like, and looking at an option like a short-term approval.
So we're going to get the jump on posting these early. So we're actually embarking on job fair season next month. With the first one we'll have towards the end of January. So we will, this goes through, we'll have approval at our first meeting in January, so then that these positions will be available to post them immediately, have them available for new hires. We actually do have somebody in one of our PE positions on a short-term approval who actually applied for an elementary position, but when we were going through that process, saw that there were some credit hours, reached out and said yes, they were interested in PE. Said, okay, you can go for a short-term approval. So, yeah, that's already something that we kind of look at.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Policy update and first reading of revised policy 7-.
So 730 involves students, intra-student transfers and assignments to schools. The revision to the policy allows the superintendent to have the final say in where a student is placed in what school.
Codifies the overflow process.
Yep.
Any questions? Curriculum update.
Yeah, we'll go to the next two.
Hi everyone, again. So just a quick update on some of our curriculum initiatives for this school year. Of course, most current, first thing that we're in the midst of right now is our social studies curriculum adoption committee getting started. I'm going to skip around a little bit for me, I'm sorry. But we are really excited. We have a very diverse, very motivated committee across all of our buildings, including our social studies department teachers at Parker Junior High School, that have started to review the Inquire Ed rubric, review the standards, as well as review the mandated units of study that will be required for social studies, and get a sense of what our priorities are. So you can see in the presentation just some of the committee's initial thoughts around what our priorities are and what our considerations are. We base this on reflecting on our current work and reflecting on our current resources and what our students have access to, as well as looking at what the standards are asking for us to deliver, as well as looking at the CRTL standards that we're focused on for this school year. So we feel really good about the committee's work starting out. We just had our first team meeting, and then our second meeting, we heard from our first set of vendors. We heard from TCI, which is a K-8 social studies program, and then we also heard from HMH, which is also was adopted by District 153. So we have some pre-conversations with our area districts to get an idea of what everyone else is utilizing. So we are at the stage of hearing from the vendors. Of course, those vendor presentations, everyone's the best, right? Everyone is what you should go with. But I feel really good about the district, our ability to have some level of discernment by using our rubrics and using our processes that we have relied on for math and for ELA, as well as just our overall collaboration skills to make decisions that are best for our students and our needs and being in alignment. So we are continuing for in January with one more meeting before break, just to hear a little bit more from both TCI and HMH. And then we'll continue in January with 2 more vendor presentations, as well as some supplemental resources. One of the things that is a little different with social studies is that we have a lot of mandated units that we need to make sure we have current resources, current articles, current information that can change pretty quickly to be able to give our students access to really high quality documents and resources. So we are going to look at some additional supplemental materials to be able to fill those needs. So we'll hear from those vendors when we come back from break, and then our committee teachers will begin the piloting process at the end of January, continue through March.
Question. So, and I've got 3. I'll start with the easy one first. So I know this is K through 8.
Yes.
Why did we go pre-K through 8?
So that's actually, both of the programs have preschool resources. We should have included pre-K in the presentation as well.
Right.
We have teachers that are experienced with pre-K as well on the committee, so that is not left off.
All right, okay. Glad to hear that. So, right. Second, I'm going to date myself. So, a few years ago, there was a thing called encyclopedias. So, how are we going to deal with technology now, with social studies now, because, you know, there's new stuff, new technology.
Sure.
How's that going to, the curriculum going to?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've only started to hear from, the committee has heard from 2 vendors. Behind the scenes, my team has vetted and done our preview and our comparison of the inquired rubric with all of the programs that we'll look at with the committee. But one of the things that we look for is not just having a textbook, but also having an online version of the textbook. All of the programs, that's just standard, that the texts are available online. Also, Canvas integration is really important for us. It's being a full Canvas district. All of the programs that we're looking at will be able to work with Canvas so that it's easy for our students, it's easy for our teachers, single sign-on, access, all of those things. We feel really good about the tech support and the tech, our ability to be able to support the programs that we'll select.
So one of the things that I noticed when the long range committee was at Parker recently was that the library, and I use that term very loosely, had some transitional things going on with computers and
Sure.
books, and typically I would think that that's going to, the libraries are going to be a resource for children when it comes to this curriculum. Have you guys, the committee, kind of looked at how we're going to integrate those pieces and what needs the district may have to address with each of the schools in terms of that type of thing?
Yeah, no, I think that's something we'll need to look closely at as we get closer to making a recommendation and a final adoption. In our media center at Parker, for example, as well as our media centers throughout our elementary schools, we want to keep them with books that can get into kids' hands. So this would not, any technology change or upgrade would not eliminate those books. Some of the older devices, like the ones you saw at Parker, that we pretty much use just a few of them for staff to sign on to things who don't have devices. We know that that's part of an upgrade long term.
Okay, last question. Glad to hear that there appears to be some collaboration in terms of what's going on at 153 and 161. One of the things I often think about when we look at the portrait of the graduate and creating a 21st century learner, how are we also doing with 233?
Yes, absolutely. So that is part of our process that at one of our committee meetings, our department chairs who coordinate often with the HF department chairs. It's part of our structure because we have department articulation meetings throughout the school year. Our HF department chairs, or their HF department chairs, will be invited to our meetings just to hear their feedback. Our social studies teachers talk with them often, but this will be one of the first times that the elementary teachers, for example, will hear from the high school of what sort of the end of the road is for our students throughout our area, and just get their feedback on what we should be sure to keep and what we need to be looking for in our programs.
Okay, thank you.
But I do want to stress, no problem, I do want to stress that articulation with our junior high and our high school social studies teachers, that happens throughout the school year. We don't wait for the curriculum committee meeting to happen.
Well, yeah, it appears that this is a new curriculum, although it's yet to be decided what it is, and so it's kind of like making sure that, hopefully we're looking at, and again, I'm sure that everyone's doing their job.
Absolutely. And we did that similarly with ELA and math adoption. We did talk to HF and get their perspective on the programs that we selected. Just a few other curriculum pieces. Our ongoing work with Canvas and Thoughtful Classroom. We just wrapped up our Thoughtful Classroom learning walks at 2 of our elementary schools last week. We'll continue with the additional schools after the break. We did the learning walks as best we could virtually last year. We've certainly learned a lot, but they are so much better in person, where the Thoughtful Classroom coaches can come and observe instruction and have those hallway feedback conversations to tell us how we're doing and what are some suggestions for continuing to keep the Thoughtful Classroom strategies alive in our district. So we'll continue with Parker and the other elementary schools after break. And then with Canvas, again, continuing to build out our curriculum in Canvas. We finished K-8 ELA and math last year and over the summer, which was a huge push for our department as well as our teachers who work in our summer curriculum work. We will continue with science this year, so we're planning to be done with the science Canvas work this school year, so that in the summer we're finishing some of that up and then starting to actually work on our social studies.
I have a quick question about a mandate on the social studies. What's the date in which we have to comply?
I didn't hear you.
What's the date in which we have to comply with the mandate, or do we have a waiver in place? I'm just thinking about the length of time it takes to do this process, but also I didn't actually see the mandate date on it.
Some of the mandates have different dates. So some of them we have until July, some of them we are in compliance with right now, but we know that there's more that we can do. So for example, the LGBTQ curriculum, we need to have that in place ASAP, and by July, and we have our compliance visit coming up in this year, but by July we need to have those in place.
Unbelievably almost here.
So we're in the very beginning phases of taking a look at revisions and planning for Summer Academy. Our first step is to start with posting for our summer school leadership. So our principal, assistant principal, we are looking at potentially adding some additional administrative support, either in the form of an additional assistant principal or an additional summer academy administrator who has special education credentials to help with some of the ESY work. That person also handles kinder prep.
What's ESY?
Oh, extended school year. And so just being able to have someone that can handle all of the things that come with the prep for that. Kinder Prep is a program that we really value. We picked it up as part of a grant several years ago, and we have not put it down. And as that program just continues to be very popular, we want to make sure that we can keep those things going. Also, just looking at dates, we'll keep the same 6-week program. Last year we had a combination of remote programs and in person, barring any major changes with cases or requirements. We are planning on doing our Summer Academy program in person fully at Parker Junior High School. We will still offer the enrichment program, STEAM, Center for Talent Development, our Northwestern courses. Some of those, it's yet to be seen if those organizations will be fully in person or if some of those need to be remote. So we'll keep our ears open for those things. Another thing that we have started to talk about is that we are going to explore and do some research on increasing the pay rate for our summer academy teachers. We lost, just anecdotally, I would have to look at our exact numbers, but I know that we lost several of our teachers to other districts that were paying more last summer, or had sign-on bonuses or things like that. So we're taking a look at what is appropriate for our budget as a recommendation and also what's competitive for our area.
Are you going to have to shield test during the summer as well, or can we not do that, or are we required? How are we going to handle that?
Not sure yet. I'm sure we will get, last year the state gave us guidance for summer learning. I'm sure we will get guidance on that. Right now, I would think that if we are still in the position where we are shield testing by the end of the school year, by March even, we would plan on shield testing if it's available in summer academy also. But that's something that we would really need to wait for guidance on.
One of the things that, and I'm sitting here trying to recall all of the recommendations that she came up with. I think she was the woman that ran the summer academy last year.
Ms. McNeil?
Yes. She had like a list, like 3 major recommendations. I know one of them was on the challenge of staffing and trying to, so it sounds like we're trying to address some of that with increase in cost. But the other one that I think kind of dovetailed into that was trying to get staff from the district that kind of knew the children and
absolutely. Yes.
So are we trying to do some of those recommendations?
Absolutely, and we rely very heavily on the feedback from the summer academy administrators. We don't know yet if they will be the same administrators. They certainly did a fantastic job last summer. We're very pleased with their hard work. Yes, we are trying to just, again, make sure that we are being competitive with what other districts are offering for summer school. We certainly don't want to lose our teachers. They know our students, they have the relationships. I will say that the majority of our summer academy teachers are D161 teachers. We do post for outside positions. I think last year, I would have to run the numbers, I can bring it back, but last year was the first year that we had probably the highest number of teachers and staff from outside of our district. But last year was an anomaly in many ways for not just us, for a lot of districts, but we are trying to make sure that we can stay competitive and keep our teachers wanting to teach summer academy here.
Yeah, but I think, and to your point, I think one of the things that was an anomaly in a very good way though was the numbers seemed to go higher than usual, and I think some of that was, and this is one of the things I'm always interested in. How do we continue to try to go ahead and close that achievement gap? And so I think that, again, you guys did a good job last summer, and I would like to continue to see that growth in terms of trying to address the needs. And so the staffing was a part of that. Again, and I can't remember all her recommendations, but they were all good recommendations to try to continue to sustain that growth in terms of the students participating. For example, I don't recall if it was that we try to go ahead and have more opportunity to keep our children in school so they can go full day. I think we work with the Park District to have things that happen after school.
Yes, so we are planning on doing that again, of having our summer academy program be a full day. Last year was our first year of doing a full day summer academy program, or the full day option. We saw that a lot of parents were really interested, and it was beneficial for a lot of kids. It also gave us opportunities to do more enrichment activities, more time for kids to get exercise outside, and it just benefited kids in many ways. We will continue to do the transportation to the Park District, and that's really what we provided this year, was for students who did the half day with us. We transported them to the Park District for their afternoon programs if they signed up for it.
And we're going to try to have, again, for the special education students, I think that was another issue. We weren't able to necessarily accommodate as much as we could. Are we going to try to do something more about that in your planning?
Absolutely. We want to be able to accommodate any student in D161 that wants to attend Summer Academy. So that goes back to doing it at our school that we have the most space available to use, having as many teachers as possible that are knowledgeable of our students, and making them want to stay for the entire summer, whether it's for a half day or a full day. But we would need the staff to be able to do all those programs. So I do want to say, Ms. McNeil and Ms. Spinoza did a wonderful job of hiring, but then also just really keeping the teachers motivated throughout the summer and keeping everyone in good spirits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
We're going to move item G to January in the interest of time. And very excited.
We will load your PowerPoint next time, Kim.
So we will move to item H, which is January board topics.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any feedback on the general January report topics. Sometimes a few things will sneak into there as we're preparing for the second half of the school year. There's a couple of heavy hitters in there. Obviously, we're coming back on assessment updates and some district data and certainly those pieces. Continuing with our policy updates, nothing too crazy, but we will continue the shift from 21-22 conversations to 22-23 conversations.
Any questions?
Very short closed session.
May I have a motion to go to executive session?
So moved. Second.
Nobody second.
Please. All in favor?
Aye.
And there's no action to be taken when we come back. Scott Leonard, thank you. Phil, have a good night. Eric, thank you.